Yo, welcome back everybody. Today we have gameplay. Oh wait, that's not gameplay. It's not gameplay. Today we have patch review because we have an expansion coming out on January 17th. That is next Tuesday. And we finally have a consolidated set of information to know what's coming in the next patch. That is all of the new minions, a bunch of the changes to existing minions, some minions leaving the game, some heroes changing, etc., etc. So I figured I'd do a rundown real quick. A relatively short, by my standards, rundown of the patch notes and do it all in one place, because you might have noticed that it is very, very difficult to get a hold of all of the information in the same place. We don't have an official patch notes from Blizzard yet. So Hearthstone, or like a couple people on Twitter, props to Ben Hearthstone out there, who put together a lot of these consolidated slides with all of the card art together. We have it all in one place and we can go through it all in one video. All right, so if you haven't gauged well by looking at the background right now, we are getting Undead added to the game as of Tuesday. There are 16 new minions being added in the Undead tribe. Basically, minions that are built around death rattles and reborn effects. So instead of being a massive scaling composition, they're built typically around getting minions to die and then effects happening after those minions die. There's a lot of scaling in the composition, but it relies around that type of base component. Without any further ado, let's just jump through some of the minions and get an idea of the Undead tribe. For example, the first image up here in the top left, Sister Death Whisper is one of the build-around cards in this composition. 6-star after a friendly minion is reborn, give Undead 1/3 permanently. You might have noticed 1/3 is an odd number to take, because 1/3 is a lot of health permanently per minion that with reborn that is dying. Yeah, that's crazy. Get 3-4 minions on the board that are reborn, suddenly your board's scaling anything that's left on the board at that point by 4-12 a turn per Sister Death Whisper. It's not like there's a lack of reborn coming in this tribe. It's just a ridiculous amount of stats that's based around that reborn mechanic. So you can think about this in a, we'll call it a roundabout, just like a vacuum of where are death rattles good against certain things. Murlocs, death rattles, rock, paper, scissors, giant stats, etc., etc. They usually keep themselves in check, where stats counter death rattle type builds, death rattles counter poison scams, scams counter the big stat boards over and over and over again. We've basically been playing a game right now that with rock, paper, scissors, where scissors is just banned. That we don't have any really good death rattle builds. Exodia Pirates kind of covers that niche a little bit. Exodia Mechs to a degree, but they're really hard to piece together. And giant stat boards are just crushing everything. And they had to move poison all the way to 6 to deal with it. In this patch, you're going to see that poison is going to come back to a degree on Tavern 4. And we have this whole tribe that's going to be built around death rattles. And if it's anything like any other new tribe that's added to the game, it's going to be completely overtuned. All right, without any further ado, let's go through the minions. Risen Rider, 1-star, Taunt Reborn. This might look familiar. If you remember, we used to have Acolyte on Tavern 1, which was a neutral 2/2 reborn taunt, and it was one of the best cards in the game. This is now a tribal taunt minion, which reborns into another taunt, and on top of that, we now have tons of reborn synergy in the game. This is going to be a build-around card for the composition, and good on practically any board. If you think about late-game compositions, this thing can, kill Leroy. It can be used as a tech small taunt at the end of the game. Deal with 2 divine shields, etc., etc. It's going to be useful in a lot of places. Rothhide Knoll has 1 attack for each friendly minion that died this combat. So basically a 1-star that acts like a pseudo scavenging hyena, but synergizes with all tribes. 4 health is a pretty nice number. Can trade pretty well in the early portion of the game, but doesn't really have any build-around potential. 1-stars typically don't have build-around potential. But seems good enough to be on Tavern 1. Kind of an interesting piece. Who really knows how good this one's going to be? Nerubian Death Swarmer. 2-star, 1/3. Battlecry, give your undead 1 attack for the rest of the game. And you see in parentheses, wherever they are. You're going to see that indicator on a couple cards. Wherever they are basically means anywhere that you see an undead minion that is in your control for the rest of the game, that will be buffed. Whether it's a minion you buy from the tavern, and then once it's added, to your hand or whatever, the minion that you get once you buy it will be buffed. Minions in your hand, minions on the board, reborn minions after they resummon. Wherever they are, aura effect, your undead are going to have 1 more damage. So basically you're buying a bad minion at the beginning of the game, but that minion will give you more powerful undead minions for the rest of the game. So slow to start, but pretty much just 1 of these or 2 of these, and you're really going to have those nice death rattle based boards that are doing 3, 4, 5 damage for death rattles, reborn into minions that are doing good damage. It's kind of like playing Deathwing for any hero. Trolling down, wrong way. Scarlet Skull. Reborn death rattle, give a friendly undead +1/+2. 2-star 1/2 stat line, nothing impressive there. But even if there's just 1 other undead on the board, this thing represents a 2/4 buff. It's also a 1 damage attack twice, assuming that, it dies with 2 health, which isn't terrible. Is it a great card? Is it great for winning early rounds? Not really. But when you think about all the other synergies that exist in the tribe, you can build around these kind of cards. Ghoul of the Feast. Avenge 1. Alright, well, Avenge 1 is an odd card text. Give a friendly minion of each minion type +3 attack. Holy crap, it's Bird Buddy on steroids. 3-star 2/4, same stat line of Bird Buddy, and now you get to buff multiple minions on the board that are like, I don't know, we pieced together random stuff for the beginning of the game, and now we get a Ghoul of the Feast, and suddenly they're just going to be dealing +3, +6, +9 damage in the middle of the game. It's also tribal, so you can buff and play this thing. You can also use it with cards like, say, for example, Scarlet Skull, to receive buffs and after minions die. And you can see how quickly this amount of stats just gets out of control. Just this thing in position 1, 5 random minions of different tribes, and then Ghoul of the Feast in position 7. And this guy right here represents like +30 damage to your board. And that's a 2-star plus a 3-star. You might be gauging pretty quickly here that, they may have overtuned this tribe. A lot of these effects, when you compare them to like, what do beasts do on Tavern 3? What do dragons do on Tavern 3? What do Naga do on Tavern 3? Nowhere even close to this. It reminds me a lot of Quilboar when they were first introduced. And the beginning of the game was like, didn't find Quilboar. I guess I need to power level, because there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to compete with the Quilboar boards because they have twice the number of stats that all the other tribes have. It's going to be an interesting couple of days, and we'll for sure see some nerfs, but it'll be an interesting one to play around with at first. All right, Jelly Belly. 3-star 3/5. After a friendly minion is reborn, give +3/3. So basically, or gain +3/3, I should say this one correctly. This Jelly Belly gonna get big. You get a couple reborn minions on the board. This 3/5 becomes a 6/8, maybe a 9/11. Not exactly a crazy late game potential, but a 9/11 in the middle of the game is a pretty damn good card, and you can power level with it. So you can see it being useful on a lot of different board states. Lich Doctor. Taunt. At the start of your turn, give minions that died last combat +1/1. A 3-star 3/2 isn't exactly something impressive. We don't really want to play 3-star 3/2s. But the ability to buff the board potentially multiple turns in a row can add up to a lot of stats. Kind of underwhelming, because you have to lose rounds to effectively use this, and on top of having to lose rounds, you're only giving stats to minions that you pick up that are like Tavern 2, Tavern 3 minions. You tend to replace a lot of those cards. The one redeeming factor that you can easily see here with Lich Doctor is that a lot of cards are built to utilize stuff that you would have in the early game, like, say, for example, these Scarlet Skulls, or like these little taunts. Giving them stats aren't necessarily temporary stats. You may be keeping these things on your board all the way to like turn 10, turn 12. So this does have some level of late game value. Unimpressive, in my opinion, to start, but we will see. There's a lot of broken stuff in Undead. Here's RDU's face. RDU was the one that announced these guys. So like, hey, RDU's face is on the image. RDU, nerf RDU real quick. Soul Splitter. 4-star 4/2. Reborn, start a combat, give a friendly undead reborn. So it's a reborn minion that reborns another minion on the board. Very quickly, you can see where the synergy's going. You got Ghoul of the Feast value. You got Sister Death Whisper value. You've got minions that are here that are really good. I guess I should say things like Scarlet Skull, but it already has reborn. Lich Doctor, not really one you want to target. Jelly Belly, it's not bad to bring back another 3/1 body, but you can easily see how it synergizes with a lot of these card effects. But more than anything, it's like, This card right here, Build Around, you're going to like seeing this stuff at the end. It kind of reminds me of Athissa and Siren in its original form. This thing gives you more effects, and this thing contributes to scaling. The other things that are on the board really aren't that important. You just need to be able to get a hold of those kind of things and pair them together. And if you can do that, then you're going to take a ton of stats. Possessive Banshee, Battlecry, give an undead unit +2/+7. Holy crap, that's a huge stat line. A 4-star 2/7 isn't great by itself. But if you have a minion on the board that you're keeping, say for example, like one of these guys, or one of these guys early in the game that you've given a few stats to with a Lich Doctor or whatever it might be, maybe Nerubian Death Swarmers, give a big bunch of health to it and keep it around through the mid game. Because this Battlecry is as good as most 4-stars, and you can sell the body back off. Handless Forsaken. Death Rattle, summon a 2/2 hand with Reborn. 4-star 2/3 stat line. Sucks, right? But let's think about this one. The Death Rattle effect on this card is to summon a minion that has a Reborn. So that means that you have a 2/3 body that summons a 2/2 that summons a 2/1. And when we start looking at these like, oh, Reborn minions dying or minions dying effects, School of the Feast and Sister Death Whisper, etc., 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 it's compounding, right? This thing getting Reborn, for example, with this Reborn guy on the board is then going to Reborn that thing and start that chain all over again. This plus this on the board is like 6 minions that are 2 attack that can all synergize with anything else that you're using in this tribe. Going further, now we talk about the upper tavern tier, the 5-star and 6-star versions of minions on this board, and they're going to be, the game defining ones. A new Barak and Nerubian King, Death Rattle your undead, have +2 attack for the rest of the game wherever they are, making those Reborn minions even better. And every time this guy dies, every time he dies, that stack gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Think of it like an aura that you're building on your board. Think about reborning a new Barak over here. Every combat, you get a +2, then a +2 again to all of the undead minion on the board. That stays permanently. And then the next combat, you start again and again and again. It's not like it's a terrible body by itself. It's just going to keep compounding that. It wouldn't be uncommon to see in the mid or late game scenarios where you're going to see 20, 30, 40 damage auras for all of the death rattles on these undead boards. And if they keep summoning more and more things like these Handless Forsakens, for example, if they all have +30 attack, that does a lot of damage, and it's very hard to counter with big stats because you get overwhelmed. Next, Hungering Abomination. I swear this card is going to be chat's favorite. This, judging by the initial reception of this card when it was introduced, everybody loves this guy. Giant Abomination that every time a minion dies on your board, it gets permanently bigger. We love big stats, right? A 5-star, 3/4, not very impressive. But if you can have 10, 12 minions dying on the board before the Hungering Abomination, 10, 10, 12, 12 a turn adds up very quickly. Over the couple turns, it suddenly gets to be 30, 30, 40, 40. It's much like Mythrax or like Razorgore back in the day. Razorgore has gotten a little bit outclassed over time. But if you get it early enough in the game, that snowball effect of being able to take advantage of stats on stats on stats on stats, and then just level straight to the moon, you can just go to 6 with these kind of cards, and they're going to be very, very, very good for power leveling. Tavern 6, Colossus of the Sun, 6-star 6/6, literally Satan. Just literally Satan. Divine Shield Reborn. Oh god, we've had this effect before. Remember, they had to remove it! Alistra used to exist in the game. It was a 6-star 7/7 in its original form, with Reborn and Divine Shield. Regardless of the card text, regardless of what it does, it is 4 instances of 6 damage. No buffs, no nothing applied. It is an undead minion. It can take advantage of all of these buffs and whatnot that exist in the game. But 6 damage at the very minimum 4 times. 24-ish damage range. More likely than not, you're going to at least have a few auras going. 10 damage 4 times. It's a big minion in the middle of the game. That is a ton of tempo. And it's going to be another reason why you have to play toward more utility in this meta and a little bit less on the like, oh, let's make gigantic stats and scale. Last but not least, the Eternal Summoner summons 2 Eternal Knights. Eternal Knight doesn't seem to be listed here. That's because it's a token. Every time an Eternal Knight dies, buff all future Eternal Knights +1/1. So the more Eternal Knights that you're buying and playing on the board, the more Eternal Knights that die, the bigger the Eternal Knights get. So over and over and over again, you're reborning Eternal Summoners. They're bringing up Eternal Knights. They're going to die. They're going to be little to start. 5 damage, 6 damage, 7 damage, 8 damage, and then I'll compound over and over and over again. I should bring that image up. I'll just put it here, right now. I have to do it after the fact because it's not in this first image. Right here, right now, I'll put it up on the screen. That's what an Eternal Knight is. Those things just keep getting bigger and bigger over the course of the game as they die over and over and over and over and over again. All right, that's your Undead. But that's not everything. We have like 7 of these sets of slides of new information. They're not as long, don't worry. But let's go over a few more. For example, all of the new Dual Tribe minions brought to you by Slysssa, who's in the bottom corner of this image. Slysssa, showing us multiple Dual Tribe minions. For those of you that are unaware that we're getting Dual Type minions, as the name suggests, these minions are 2 tribes. So Quillbore Pirate can exist in a game, this is confirmed by the developers, exist in any game that has Quillbore or Pirate available in the lobby. You don't have to have both tribes in to be able to get these cards. And whenever you use buff effects or whatever, or tribal mechanics, as long as, you know, a buff Quillbore will affect a Quillbore Dual Tribe minion, or buff Undead will affect something that's, say, Undead Pirate or Undead Mech, for example. So you can use 2 different tribes to interact with these types of cards. Thorn Captain, 1 star after this card is added, or after a card is added to your hand, gain 1 health until your next turn. So basically, a 4/1 body on Tavern 1 is okay if you're going to be buying other cards, playing Blood Gems, using Spellcraft, whatever it might be. This card gets a lot better because you get an extra 1, 2, 3 extra health passively each turn. Overall, it's a 1 star. It's not built around. It's kind of an interesting card. Not as bad, not as good as typically getting Economy is, but not a bad hit early in the game. It's not like you're just buying a 2/3 body. Blazing Skyfin, 2-star 1/3 Murloc Dragon. That tribe synergy is interesting because it can be poisoned and it can be shielded with Nadina. It's very much like why Ball is one of the best dragons in the game. After you play a Battlecry minion, gain 1/1. So it's a minion that synergizes with playing Battlecries. Good thing Murlocs don't play a lot of Battlecries, right? Monka, Seems like now that we have Ball, we have Blazing Skyfin, Murloc boards are going to want to try to play toward Menagerie boards, right? The ability to play multiple Menagerie minions, take advantage of Jug, take advantage of all of the Murloc buffs, the Primal Fins, all of that kind of stuff, and then maybe even in the long term put an Nadina in front of it. And it's not really a Murloc board. It's not really a Dragon board. It's more of a hybrid of the two. And being able to pivot either way, depending on what late game cards you get, whether it's, you know, Murkai and Bran, or it's Nadina and like Calicos or whatever it might be, leaves you super, super flexible with a decent way to scale. Seems like a really, really strong card. I wouldn't be surprised to see this thing not get a ton of play in the initial patch because Undead's going to be overtuned. But if you nerf Undead a little bit, Blazing Skyfin is going to see a lot of play on ladder. Corpse Refiner, 2-star, 2/3, Avenge 4. Got stuck on the Avenge 4. This minion sells for 1 more gold. So basically, if you have 4 minions die before this thing dies, it gets a little tick on the card. This thing's stored 1 extra gold. Now it's worth 2. If you keep it around again and 4 more minions die before it, can be worth 3 gold, 4 gold, 5 gold, 6 gold. I mean, it's our working assumption. I haven't heard any clarification on this to indicate that's not true. That being said, Avenge 4 is really slow. It can be very, very, very hard to get a vanilla 2/3 minion to not die in the middle of the game. Yeah, we have some good cards. We now have a neutral 1-star Reborn Taunt again. That'll keep it pretty safe. But playing a bad minion and losing rounds so that you can get a couple gold in the middle of the game could be worth it, could not be worth it. I think it's going to be pretty strong on certain heroes like Greybow or Onyxia. Heroes that like to be able to play toward a bunch of tokens on the board. And then if you're, you know, ahead because those heroes are already really strong in the early portions of the game, Death Rattles with Greybow, Onyxia with the extra attacks. Then you can get some extra gold, power level with it, whatever it might be. Overall though, relatively weak card. Elemental, 3-star, 3/1, basically the old Overseer effect. Battlecry minions Give minions in Bob's Tavern 1/1 for the rest of the game. It's an elemental demon. It synergizes with Nomi. It jumpstarts Nomi. It's a double Nomi buff if you cycle this card in the middle of the game. It gives you a way to play toward bigger versions of, say, for example, mechs, like with magnetics that you could repeatedly apply on top of units. Overall, just ridiculously strong, right? The only downside of this card is that it's a 3/1 stat line. It costs you some rounds in the middle of the game and you lose tempo. But if you can just buy and sell this thing in the mid game, you're going to want to do that very, very often. Because 1/1 on all future minions adds up, gradually over time to be a lot of stats. All right, moving on. Puffer Quill. This was a card that is very, very similar to a card that was designed by a few people. A few people should be credited. I know Minder was pushing this a lot in my own channel as a Quillbore card back in the day as a design, or how to change poisonous. After a spell is played on this minion, gain poisonous until the next turn. So it's a Quillbore Naga. You could play Spellcraft on it, or you could play a Blood Gem or whatever it might be, and it gains poisonous for a minute. You can give it Divine Shield with Glow Scale. Oh God, says people. That seems like a Divine Shield poison. Divine Shield poison is so toxic. Well, if you can't scale it, not in an easy way, then it's not going to be a major threat when, Undead are everywhere putting up 1,000,000 units that are attacking for 20, 30 damage in the middle of the game, 10 to 20 in the mid game, 20, 30 toward end game. Poison gets run over pretty easily there. If this thing ends up on a late game Athissa board, on the other hand, you have a pretty easy target that you can scale with Athissa, and then you can also Divine Shield it or poison it or whatever it might be. Maybe this thing ends up on a late game Quillbore pivot. You have the ability to utilize Blood Gems. You have the ability to take practically anything in the late game when we're talking about the final turns and just apply it. Take any old random buff and you can give this thing poison. It's going to be a nice tech card at the end of the game, but mostly it's going to be a staple that you're going to see mid-game boards build around a couple of these kind of guys if we end up in a more stat-oriented meta. All right, Magma Lock, 4-star 1/1. Disregard the 1/1 for a second. At the end of your turn, gain 1/1. Repeat for each minion you played this turn. So this thing is at minimum a 3/3, right? Assuming that you didn't Janda swap into it or something. Because you're going to buy the Murloc, you're going to play it on the board, it's going to be a 1/1. At the end of the turn, it's going to gain a 1/1, and it's going to repeat because you bought that minion this turn. Every other minion that you buy over the course of the game is going to continue to scale this thing. It is once again an Elemental and a Murloc. I guess I shouldn't say once again. This one's a Murloc Dragon, and this one's an Elemental Demon. These guys all kind of have the same feel to them. Whether it's that triangle of stat scaling. Cards that want to play a lot of cyclable things like Murlocs through. You have the Elementals for cycling like Nomi type things. And now Magma Lock, which is the Elemental Murloc, which wants to play a lot of cards, whether you're playing toward Nomi, and you make a gigantic thing out of Magma Lock, or you want to play toward Bran, and you can play a bunch of stats and cyclable Murloc stuff. And then you get the passive attack scaling off the Magma Lock and some extra health. Seems pretty solid across the board. Kind of hard to gauge without knowing how fast the meta is going to be. But a lot of these cards, they feel like they're going to be really good if there's a balanced meta. And they feel like they're kind of bait if the game's all about Undead. And Undead scale way too fast. Now that being said, Cyborg Drake. 5-star Divine Shield. Your Divine Shield minions have 10 attack. This has been confirmed by the developers to indicate that any minion currently having Divine Shield on your board has 10 attack. So this thing initially will be a 12/8 with Divine Shield. It'll smack into something and it'll drop to a 2/8. Meanwhile, all the other things on the board that have Divine Shield will still have that passive 10 attack bonus until they lose their shields respectively. Now that you can see some easy synergies here. George is going to love this card. All my minions have 10 attack? Awesome. That is a ton of tempo. You just have a couple mid-game Divine Shields and you find a Cyborg Drake and suddenly your board is smacking people. Because you're not talking about a ton of stats invested into this. Just 2 Divine Shields in the mid-game, tripled into a 5, got a Cyborg Drake, and suddenly you go from losing rounds to dealing 15 to people. Crazy tempo. Super strong in that way. Great for Mecro boards. A really easy way to get them off the ground. Also, dragons as a synergy, so you have Nadina as an option. Could be pretty good. Doesn't seem like a minion that you get to the super late game with, but incredibly good for damage control and incredibly good for like those mid-game murder board type compositions. Sin Runner Blanchy. Sin Runner Blanchy, reborn, 5-star 4/4. This is horsey now. We've been affectionately calling it horsey all week. Because this thing is gonna be busted, man. This is like Turbo Divine Shield. The minion comes back with all of its health and enchantments. Meaning, you can attack with this giant minion, say it's a 30/30, and then it dies, and it comes back a 30/30. If it was a Divine Shield minion 30/30, now it's going to be a Divine Shield minion 30/30, then die and come back as a Divine Shield 30/30. All of its enchantments. That's nuts. There's practically, I mean, I still can't think of any way that is truly that detrimental to ever have Blanchy on the board instead of having Divine Shield. Maybe if you're a Mechrel board, maybe there's some niche usage there. But like, Blanchy's gonna be nuts. This fits Leapfroggers as like a turbo version of Sewer Rat. You can even taunt it up when you need to have that like taunt reborn taunt type effect. This thing could be a last minion on Leapfroggers where you get a ton of buffs. Then the Leapfroggers, or this thing dies and comes back with all the Leapfrogger buffs and it bounces to something else. This thing can be really good in, say, for example, Goldrin Beast boards. It can just be a strong mid-game tempo minion or menagerie minion or whatever. It's just one of the best minions that have ever been added to the game because that effect right there is like Turbo Divine Shield. All right. Fell Stomper. 6-star Demon Beast. 3/7. After you summon a minion in combat, give your minions +3 attack. That's a ton of tempo. That's like a ridiculous amount of tempo. He's a purple dancing dragon. He's pretty much Barney. But yeah, that is a crazy amount of tempo. Put that thing on a Mama Bear board, throw some Reborns out there, and suddenly those little rats that you have on the board, those little Hydras or whatever, just the bullshit that's on a beast board, suddenly they have +3, 6, 9, 12, 15 extra attack. Those things die in turn, then start buffing the board even more. It's not hard to see that that adds up really quickly. Is it long-term value? Is it permanent? No. But it is very, very good in the short term. It also gives you, it basically gives you an extra turn or two reach for those mid-game boards. Mama Bear boards, Soul Juggler boards, whatever they might be. You get a Fell Stomper, you're going to win 1 or 2 rounds more after you typically would start losing. All right, well, take a breather. Take a sip. Get a sip of tea over here. Because this next one, oh God. Oh fuck. What did we just do here? Greta Gold Gun. 6-star 2/9. Unimpressive stat line. Adds a spellcraft spell to your hand. Make a different friendly pirate or Naga golden until the next turn. So Golden Hammer is added as a card on Tavern 6. We really needed a way to make Golden Hoggers immediately for APM pirates. Did we really need a way to make Golden Athissa instantly? Oh God, it makes a spell every turn too. Hopefully they saw planned ahead. It says different pirate or Naga. I assume that doesn't mean only it can't be itself. It has to be a different name card. Because if you have 2 Greta Gold Guns on the board and an Athissa, for example, you could just take the first Greta, target the Athissa, turn it golden, take the second Greta, target the first Greta with it, in turn making the first Greta golden, which then would generate a new spellcraft spell, which you could then use on the other Greta, which would then make a new spellcraft spell, and then you could start using the golden whatever, wherever else you want. But Athissa's over there laughing as you keep playing all those spells and giving 2/2s to the board. Yeah. If they didn't see that one ahead of time, that combo gonna be real nasty for passive scaling every single turn. Hopefully they did, and that's why they worded it like make a different pirate or Naga that way. But I also could interpret that as a different pirate or Naga as in just not this card. We will not. We'll see. We'll find out on Tuesday. Actually, we're going to find out tomorrow. For those of you that have paid attention to the news or the patch notes and whatnot, you know tomorrow is a playtest live on Twitch. About the time this video goes live, that playtest will be going on. So 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. there will be a playtest going on with all of the new stuff on a private server, just kind of demoing new things so everyone can build some hype. The patch will be out for everybody on Tuesday, January 17th again. Last but not least, Mechadraxus over here. Battle cry, add a random Mecha Demon to your hand. You might be wondering, what are the Mecha Demons? The Mecha Demons are these guys. I gotta do this one after the fact too. Basically 3 different demons that give you 3 different effects. They can be magnetized to either mechs or demons. Wind Fury, Reborn, or Taunt as effects, and then stat lines to go along with them. They're basically like, finding module, finding microbots, that kind of stuff in the middle of the game for mechs, but also attachable to demons, and give a different way of building, like Wind Fury Cleave, for example. Getting a Taunt on a key minion, maybe even like, I don't know, the demons that like to play toward Death Rattle builds, or like, say, a Trickster as a way to take a bunch of extra health on that. There's a lot of decent usages. The thing that you have to remember when you compare cards like Fell Stomper and Greta Gold Gun to Mechadraxus, this is a battle cry effect. This card can be on your board. It's a 3/15. It's not that bad if you get it super early. But you can just cycle it through, keep the effect, and have the open board space again. All right. So we're through the heavy ones. There are a couple other things here real quick toward the end. 5 new minions, or really 4, because one of them, Smolderwing, is just a token of this card, that are going to be added to Battlegrounds. Sandora Straight Shot, a 4-star 3/4, Wind Fury, Divine Shield. Whenever this attacks, remove Reborn and Taunt from the target. Seems like a very targeted card to deal with certain things like Reborn, Taunted Leroy, or whatever. Seems super niche. This card's going to be super dead. You're going to see it in the mid game and be like, I guess I could pick up as neutral. It's decent tempo. Maybe I could taunt it and scale it somehow. But it's a neutral. If this was tribal, it'd be a lot more interesting. But this thing you really can't build around. And it's going to be very hard to get this effect to actually make use of it in some meaningful way. A couple people brought up a good example of where it could be a good tech card. Those gigantic Golden Trickster taunted boards, maybe you just like use it to, instead of kill it, you can then just de-taunt it and run by it and kill the Baron or whatever behind it. Taunted Leroy's, of course. A couple other niche scenarios, but not a lot of choices here. Not a lot of places where that's going to be a super useful card. Feels like a dead one. Feels like I'd rather not have it in the game than have it in the game, because most of the time you see this in the tavern, you're going to just reroll right past it. General Drakaseth. We're skipping over Smolderwing because General Drakaseth gives you the Smolderwings. Battlecry, add 2 Smolderwings to your hand. That Smolderwing gives +5 attack. You can see the synergy already. Battlecry effects. Generating Battlecry minions. Have Brand on the board. Suddenly this card is a 20 attack buff to dragons. Also, resells for 3 gold. Because the Smolderwings can be resold. General Drakaseth can be resold. So this card, if you have a dragon on the board, is an auto buy. Just buy it, cycle to 10 attack, and sell it right back off the board. If you have Bran on the board, you generate net positive 2 gold. Pretty cool. Dragons don't usually have Battlecry synergies. Pretty nasty. Now you also have dual class minions. You have synergy with the new dragon 2-star, if you guys remember this guy. Well, my little buddy over here. Whoops. The Blazing Skyfin, where you get extra 1/1s and be able to be the recipient of that buff. Super, super nice. You can just put it on Divine Shield minions naturally. I got to go back to the other guy here. Just a really flexible card with a very little downside because of how much gold it's worth. Chrononurumuru. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm just going to mispronounce this one repeatedly. Chronoormu. Chronomumanu over here. Daryl's Dream, right? A card in the tavern, 4-star 4/4. While this is in Bob's Tavern, gain stats of any minion sold. So feel free to sell everything off your board that you want. Chrononumanu is going to catch all of those stats. Chrononumanu! And then consolidate them all in one place. Put it on a dragon where you can then Nadina shield it in the long run. Maybe you just want the gold off of it so you can power level. Maybe you just really want to clear board spaces and consolidate stats so you can buy better minions. Maybe you have Nomi, because Nomi is going to be like, oh yeah, I just always sell these 30/30s back. Instead, I see a Chrononumanu in the shop, and I can sell 4 of my elementals, make 120, and only occupy 3 spots on the board. Then I can just dump the elementals back down behind it. This card is going to be busted with Vol'jin. Because the ability to swap stats and then pull stats back off to a bunch of other places and consolidate them all into one. Crazy, crazy good. This card with Ball in Vol'jin. All right, we just going to start getting nasty, you know? There are going to be a lot of abusable lines with this card. This thing is going to be built around, and it's a 4-star. It's going to be very interesting. Titus Rivendare. You might look at this card and be like, that's Baron, bro. What the hell, Bofur? That's just Baron. Baron has been removed from the game. Titus is now in its place. This is just a better version of Baron. Instead of it reading your death rattles trigger twice, it now says your death rattles trigger another time. And if you're like me, and you saw this card and you went, oh god, this makes Exodia Pirates ridiculously strong. Don't worry. They're making changes to that. It's not going to happen. Oh god, not Exodia Pirates. Yeah, Exodia Pirates would be nutty if this was changed and they didn't change something in the future. What are they changing in the future, Bofur? Cards being removed. I know this one's a little bit lower resolution, but you guys have seen these cards for a long time. You're going to know what they are. Khadgar is gone. No more Exodia Pirates. Sorry. Nope, not going to happen. Even if you get all the Barons in the world, it's not going to be good enough. Exodia Pirates is dead in the water. Imprisoner, Salt Scale Honcho, Glyph Guardian, Yoho Ogre, Stasis Elemental Khadgar, Bonker, Domo, Draconoid Enforcer. No! Not Draconoid Enforcer. I used it all the time, said nobody ever. Mechano-Tank was already gone, but they're officially removing it. Same thing with Whitemane. Baby Crush, the culprit of the most 15 damage mid-game swings. Gone. Good riddance. Baby Crush, I loved you when you were on my board, and I hated you when you were on my opponents. Good riddance. Razor Gore, kind of a bloat of Dragon Minions at this point. Pale Scale, which was a super strong staple in the mid-game. Tony and Imp Mama are now officially gone. Tony, kind of replaced by the new 6-star Naga. Imp Mama by the new Jiraxxus minion, etc., etc. And last but not least, I guess it's not quite last but not least, there's a couple images here. They're not major ones. 2 returned cards. Icky Imp is back on Tavern 1. Green Thumb is back on Tavern 3. Nice having high res images here. Beautiful. All of them back. Green Thumb, a fan favorite out there, making some really big mid-game tempo boards. A lot of damage control can be done with this, instead of just power leveling when you miss. Revamped cards. Amber Guardian's new golden version, to read this one and be consistent, is now to buff 2 minions Divine Shield instead of 1 minion and doubling the stats. So a better golden version of Amber Guardian. Peggy, this is kind of a confusing graphic. They changed Peggy to be an undead pirate, but then they removed Peggy from the game and they added Peggy Sturdy Bone to the game, which is only a pirate. You might be wondering, why build the graphic like this? I don't know. I didn't build it. The card that is in the game is Peggy Sturdy Bone. It is a pirate, is functionally unchanged from old Peggy, but it is no longer an undead looking card. They changed the art and they put regular Peggy back in. Who knows? Maybe in the future there'll be a dual tribe Peggy that's added. I don't know. And Baron, of course, changed to Titus. New person. Baron got a first name. And now, last but not least, hero changes. 4 heroes got revamped in this new meta. Can see if I can scroll in a little bit and still make it readable. Galewing. Galewing has 3 buttons worth pressing now. Oh my god. So you can read over this real quick. If you can read, it is low resolution. Westfall is unchanged, 2/2 buff for one cost of a turn. Ironforge has been changed to, really, Ironforge has been moved to the 3rd option. It's the same one functionally here on the 3rd. This is what the old Ironforge was. And now there's a new option for 2 turns from now, gain 2 gold. In addition to these changes, you now have to choose a different flight post after you choose a flight post, or flight point, whatever you call these. Flight path, that's what the word they use is. Each and every time that you choose one. So if you choose Ironforge the first time, you'll be given the option of Westfall and Plaguelands when that one redeems. Then after you do that one, say you choose Plaguelands, then you'll be given the option of Westfall and Ironforge. So you can't just take a circle around Ironforge and fly back to your home over and over and over again. No fly arounds and then come home type of flight paths. So you're going to have to plan ahead. Do we need to have Plaguelands in 4 turns? Do we need to do 1 Westfall now, then do that? Do we want to take this thing early so we can enable this thing later? because we need to be able to use that on turn 5 or whatever it might be. More strategy of the hero. Thankfully, it's not going to be a push the same button over and over again hero. It's a welcome change. Who is this? Maleficent. Maleficent's hero power now reads, whenever you summon a mech, give it to attack. All right, well, a lot of people seem to have very negative opinions on this. I think this is really strong. I think that Maleficent being built in a way that gives you what is effectively a lower version of Deathwing Aura, but only on mechs, but only on your board, gives you a build around direction in any tempo-oriented meta. Deflectobots become instantly good. Microbots become nasty, right? A microbot is a 5 attack buff to a minion, and then Death Rattle summon 3/1 minions. Like, that's nasty in the mid game. Micro Mummy early in the game, Puppbot, all that kind of stuff. They just become really, really good minions to pick up. Is it exciting? Is it really cool? Is it a huge revamp to the hero? No, but it's a way better version of the hero than what was here before. Jaraxxus, new hero power. This one is fundamentally different. All right, let me just move over here for a second so you can read both of them at the same time if you get ahead of me. Jaraxxus' hero power, choose a friendly demon. It consumes a minion from Bob's Tavern and gains its stats. Awkward, right? You see 1 cost hero power, you start thinking Reform curve. I'm going to stay low tavern tier, then level and push my button repeatedly. Well, you don't get a lot of value by consuming 1-star minions. Now you think about, like, can you play 3-on-3? Can I level straight to 3? Double buy, then hero power buy, then hero power buy roll, or double buy, really it's double buy hero power roll, level buy hero power. Is that a playable curve? Honestly, he still seems super clunky. You do have to play demons, and demons aren't great, but we'll see once the meta shakes out. It's definitely different, and it's better than what it was, because that old buff random demon bullshit, or a couple bullshit demons on your board, it never really did anything. Might as well try something different, right? Props for changing a dead hero. Maybe I'm underselling how good it is. It seems kind of mediocre still. Even a 1 gold 4/4 in the middle of the game is probably unlikely to be useful after like turn 8. And then they nerfed Pyramid to be 1 health at the start of the game instead of 2 health. So basically this is always going to be 1 health lower than it was in the past. Functionally unchanged in terms of the mechanics of Pyramid. Pyramid was a top 10 hero prior to Quest meta. Maybe their internal testing showed that Pyramid would be too strong with the new tribe. Who knows? Regardless, Pyramid initially nerfed. We're not going to see what was really that broken about him. Maybe they're heading off problems ahead of time. And that's it. That's a new patch. I got through this one in 43 minutes. Crazy. I'm usually like an hour and a half. But yeah, there's a million things to talk about. We're going to be excited to try them out tomorrow, or today when this video goes live, I should say, because I recorded this yesterday now. And yeah, it all goes live on January 17th. Hopefully you guys are excited about the new content. I definitely am. I'm really excited to see how the game shakes out in terms of balance with Undead first. But more than anything, how it shakes out once they realize that the Undead tribe, as is tradition, is way too overtuned up front. It definitely needs to be nerfed a little bit, and then see how the balance changes at that point. All right, guys. Take care. Have a great night. And I'll see you again on the other side. Peace.